If you ever wondered about the state of the UK-US special relationship, well, tonight's breaking developments might shed some light on things, because just a few hours ago, President Donald Trump announced the US had launched an all-out military attack on the Houthi rebels in Yemen. The Houthis, of course, have targeted more than 100 merchant vessels in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, a key trade corridor in the south of the Med. However, with missiles and drone strikes raining down since the Israel-Hamas war since October 2023, there has been a critical blockade of shipping. So what about the United Kingdom in tonight's developments? America's closest ally and partner in the so-called special relationship. Have we joined in the assault? Are we proving wingman like we did in joint UK-US airstrikes last year? Well, sources say that no, the UK isn't getting involved. This is a solo US effort. More concerningly, though, I understand Keir Starmer's government wasn't even given a heads up tonight about the American operation. So what does that say about our special relationship with the US? What does that say about Donald Trump's perception of Great Britain and indeed of our Labour government? Are we no longer a trusted ally? Because between the 11th of January to the 30th of May last year, the US and the UK conducted 5 joint naval airstrikes against the Houthis in response to their attacks on shipping. But from January this year, when Donald Trump was inaugurated, the US, interestingly, started going it alone when they carried out their own separate airstrikes. We've not been involved since. President Trump said in his statement tonight, "Our brave warfighters are right now carrying out aerial attacks on the terrorist bases, leaders and missile defences to protect American shipping, air and naval assets and to restore navigational freedom. No terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world." And he added, to Iran, "Support for the Houthi terrorists must end immediately. Do not threaten the American people, their president, who has received one of the largest mandates in presidential history. If you do, beware, because America will hold you fully accountable and we won't be nice about it." Well, let's get the thoughts now of defence analyst and broadcaster Stuart Crawford on this. Stuart, good evening. Thank you for joining me. What does this say about the fact that the US are going alone on this tonight? Bearing in mind our relationship in the past, we've joined them on many strikes previously, 5 in the last year. And as I understand tonight, Stuart, we weren't even given a heads up about the operation.
Yes, good evening, Ben. I don't think that I would read too much into the fact that we're not involved in this current phase of the operation. We don't know how long this operation might go on. It might be just the one strike today, or it could go on for a week. And that is something that obviously the Americans will be keeping close to their chests. But I think that there's no doubt that the relationship has changed with Donald Trump in the White House. But I still think that we are a trusted ally of the USA. Whether the USA is still a trusted ally of Britain, of course, is another thing altogether. But in the context of what's going on with the attacks on the Houthis, I don't think we need to be too concerned at the moment.
OK, there was some reports in the Times yesterday that military planners, whoever they are, they fear that HMS Prince of Wales could be attacked by Houthi rebels when it's due to pass through, I think, the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea later this year. Have you heard something similar?
Yes, I think obviously there will be a concern that if the Houthi rebels are continuing their campaign against shipping in the Red Sea through the Gulf of Aden and into the Indian Ocean, a route that HMS Prince of Wales is going to take, and several other Royal Navy ships, destroyers and frigates, and possibly a submarine, who knows, then there will be concerns. That won't happen until late June, early July, I don't think. And with a bit of luck, the Houthis will have been put back in their boxes by then. But no, it is worrying. I think the interesting thing is that the Houthis are proxies for Iran, and the other 2 proxy groups, Hezbollah and Hamas, have been effectively dismantled by the Israelis with US help. And now it's the Houthis' turn. And I always thought this was going to happen. And I've always said that at some point the USA is going to have to confront Iran directly, because it is behind all the conflict in the Middle East, and that has to be stopped.
Yeah, I think it was only last week, literally last week, off the back of Donald Trump's executive order in January, that they re-prescribed the Houthis as a terrorist organisation. So, Stuart, no concern from you that, A, we're not involved, bearing in mind that we have been going with them before, and B, I may be wrong on this, but I understand on good sources that we weren't even given a heads up about it, a courteous heads up.
Well, I mean, perhaps Trump is concerned that the secret to all these things, of course, is operational security, and he may have expressed, or his military leaders may have expressed some concern that if they broadcast it to allies, it might leak out. I think that's highly unlikely in the case of the UK. So I wouldn't read too much into it. And the fact that we weren't involved today doesn't mean we won't be involved in the future.
Yeah, OK, great stuff. Thank you, Stuart Crawford. Appreciate that. Let's get some more reaction to this now from foreign policy analyst and columnist Lee Cohen. Lee, good evening. Could it be a case of that Donald Trump just doesn't trust Keir Starmer or the British anymore?
No, I don't think that's it at all, Ben. President Trump unleashed American might on the Houthis, and it's about time. While Iran's proxies choke the life out of global trade and defy the free world, Trump's not just talking tough, he's hitting hard. And Keir Starmer said, you played a clip just a minute ago about a situation elsewhere in the world. Keir Starmer said it's time for action. Donald Trump felt it was time for action. And the Houthis hit American ships today. Trump had to act fast. This wasn't about sidelining Britain. It was about speed and decisiveness. Britain's Navy has been shoulder to shoulder with us in these waters, and Trump knows that.
Do you not think it's funny, though? I mean, maybe it's a coincidence, you tell me, but from the day he was inaugurated, we've not held one co-strike with the United States, whereas the most recent one was in December, I think. We did a joint airstrike on a base in Yemen on the Houthis. So if you're just looking at the data, Trump gets inaugurated, he wins office, and suddenly we stop working with them in the Red Sea.
Well, I think we need to look elsewhere if we're going to evaluate the special relationship. And Trump has been hand in glove speaking to Keir Starmer, with whom he, certainly has ideological differences, but they've had a very cordial relationship. And like your guest who preceded me said, I wouldn't be too concerned about this because it's just the first day of retaliation here, and we don't know if there will be further collaboration between the US and the UK on.
I guess I'm just thinking about the Chagos Islands as well. The fact that we heard whispers that the Trump administration did not want us to do a deal about the Chagos Islands. I'll speak to my panel about that next. But, who knows? Does the US, does Donald Trump now look at Britain and the Labour government as a little bit of a liability? Who knows?
Well, I don't think that Donald Trump at all looks at the special relationship as a liability. He champions the special relationship. He championed the spirit of Brexit because he values sovereignty. And above all, he values Britain as a global partner. And he knows that it needs to be untethered from unelected bureaucrats in Brussels in order to be the best partner it can. So Donald Trump absolutely puts the special relationship on a priority. So I don't think we can read into this at all and say the special relationship is at odds.
All right, let's hope so. Lee Cohen, you are foreign policy analyst and columnist. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Journalist and comms advisor Linda Jubilee, anarchist and academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and the former Labour special advisor Paul Richards. Linda, were you gagging to ask a question there?
Well, whilst I really respect what Lee Cohen is saying, I think we can remember back to what Henry Kissinger said about the special relationship. And what he said was that America does not have special relationships, it only has interests. So I think we need to keep that at the forefront of our mind going forward now. But actually, I do think in terms of protocol, he should have flagged up to Britain that this airstrike was going to happen.
Maybe he did. Let me just clarify. Maybe he did. I spoke to an MOD source and they said, we weren't involved tonight. We don't anticipate to be involved. And they couldn't quite guarantee that we weren't given a heads up, but it was the suggestion was that we weren't.
Yeah. Well, I think that's wrong.
Paul, what's your thoughts? Has Keir Starmer muddied the relationships to such an extent that now, we're not doing joint operations against the Houthis?
Well, you've heard from two independent analysts coming in from very different angles, both saying nothing to see here. So let's see, as it pans out, whether that's still the position. But at the moment, obviously, the USA is going alone. The big picture is it's quite right that they're taking on the Houthi, who are damaging international trade, are an Iranian-backed terrorist organisation, and we should all welcome that. And I suspect the RAF will be involved in future dates. I don't think the special relationship is under threat. I mean, it's slightly threatened by the fact that Trump has decided to change sides in the middle of a war, but that might be a different question.
I don't know if he has that.
Has he changed sides, Lisa?
I don't know. I don't think.
What, you're saying Trump is now a Russian...
Yeah, I don't think he has.
He seems to be helping the Russians, didn't he? He withdrew all of the support for the Ukrainians. So, maybe. I don't think he switched sides. I also don't think Donald Trump even thinks about a special relationship. I don't think Donald Trump is America first. He says it all the time. That's his policy. That's what he's been elected on, America first. So Donald Trump thinks about America and the relationship he has with the American people. So I don't think we would be in his periphery very often at all, actually.
What about potential war with Iran? I mean, it seems unbelievable, doesn't it? You've got Ukraine, Russia, you've got Gaza, Israel still brewing, and now once again this Houthi situation, which is a proxy for Iran, is now reigniting.
But as Paul says, this situation has needed to be dealt with for a long time. Iran has needed to be dealt with for a long time, and I think it was the shame, really, of the Biden administration that he did absolutely nothing.
Well, that's what Donald Trump said in his statement tonight. I mean, it was a long statement on his Truth Social. And by the way, isn't it unbelievable we're now hearing these international developments and announcements, declarations of war and airstrikes on social media? Donald Trump's version of Twitter. Anyway, Donald Trump said Joe Biden's response was pathetically weak, so the unrestrained Houthis just kept going. It's been over a year since the US flagged commercial ships safely sailed through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden. There we go. I've sailed down the Suez Canal before.
I mean, it is surprising that he's done this, but actually it's fairly praiseworthy because we've had enough of Houthi rebels, and I think it's quite right that he intervened so dramatically and so suddenly.
And he's clearly blaming Iran, which is
which is
you've got to ask yourself because he seems to act so quickly. You've got to ask yourself what would happen should he get involved in the China-Taiwan Straits.
Paul,
that's next.
It's obviously next.
Yeah.
Paul, Julie Scopes on your say. Good evening, Julie. Thanks for watching. She said, how many Houthis are over here? We have no idea. Legitimate question.
None, I would think.
That sounds a bit limerick. It's a little bit of a limerick, that is, isn't it?
There'd have to be some.
Well, we had a Palestinian guy who was supporting Hamas last week.
Yeah, and sent straight back. Quite right, too.
Well, we don't know. We don't know he's sent back.
What we're arguing about, what we're talking about is how many might be here. That's a different thing.
We just don't know. And by the way, your party, Paul, you must have seen this during the week, now don't even want to do age testing on migrants. The Tories are now making a song and dance of reintroducing it back up. But we don't know who these people are coming across the channel.
Bit rich coming from them, though, isn't it, given they had uncontrolled migration during the whole period of their government?
Shall I tell you what happened in the bridging hotels?
I'll give you that one.
When they took the asylum seekers into the bridging hotels, at night they had 3 military personnel, 3 guys, we assume they're guys, masked up, watching people queue up, going through into the hotels, watching their body language, trying to understand them, trying to see where they might have come from. Now, that's the 20,000 evacuees, and that's good to check those people. But do you imagine that that's a...
But that's mad. That is absolutely mad that we've got to have people watching someone how they walk to try and find out where they're from.
Well, what do you think people do? It's body language. It's,
but what I'm saying is, shouldn't we know who's coming in the country before they're allowed in the public? Shouldn't we know who they are?
Well, stay tuned because they're coming by the boats and also they're sneaking onto British holidaymaker cars. You'll see later in the show at 9:45. Stay tuned. I spoke to a couple who went for a nice holiday in France, drove back through Calais and ended up finding a bit of a surprise clinging onto the back of their bike rack. And unbelievably, they were fined. Anyway, got a nice chat with them later on in the show.